Hey everyone, this is Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net, and I've been getting a lot of questions from readers of my Save BluRay 3D blog, which is linked to below if you want to check it out. I'm personally very happy with that blog, and they have asked me a couple questions. The first question they've asked is, what does your BluRay 3D collection look like? So I will be making a video at some point showing all the 3D movies that I have. Another question people have asked is, what is the worst 3D movie you own? And I think they ask that in terms of, not whether or not the movie's good or bad, but how the 3D is used. And thankfully for that one, which I will be also making soon, I actually happen to have a movie that used 3D very, very poorly, while also happening to be a very terrible movie. Not going to name what it is right now, but for people who were buying this format in the first 5 months, you probably got a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about, and you can start laughing now when I give you full permission that I actually own that movie. And then the third question is, what's the strangest BluRay 3D you ever have? And I kind of wonder why people ask me this. I think they're asking, what movies do you think was just really bizarre that they've released in 3D? And I have a few of them. I mean, Dolphin Tale is one of the movies that's in 3D. On the surface, that seems pretty odd to be released in 3D, but it's not. I'm not picking it because it actually is very good in 3D. It's actually one of the best 3D movies that I have in terms of how they use it. Another strange one is March of the Wooden Soldiers, which, yeah, they did that. They actually did that, and I probably do want to talk about that at some point, but it's functional and it's consistent, so I don't know if it's strange enough. And then finally, someone showed me it and I picked it up. I already made another unboxing video about it, and then when I watched it, it was like, oh my gosh, this is so bizarre. I don't know why they do that. And that is this. Michael Jackson's This Is It. And for those of you who want to ask, because some of you are going well, I was not aware that that was in 3D. This is true. Most of you will have found this on the store shelves. In fact, most of you who own this, this is the one you own. I picked this up for $3, by the way, for comparison's sake. However, at one point, Sony was actually giving this specific BluRay 3D away as a promotional item for buying a TV. For those of you who are not aware of what was going on, when 3D TVs first hit the market, there was no TV channels that were in 3D. Manufacturers were selling 3D TVs, but they had no content to show. So I think the idea was that certain TVs would have an exclusive 3D movie to kind of get the collection started, and then you would buy the movies at your own pace later on, and then eventually when 3D networks would come to the airs, you would watch them, and eventually places like Sky and ESPN, at least briefly, got into that. I don't know if that was a solid idea to do that, because it just resulted in people buying TVs that they were not ultimately very satisfied with, specifically because it had a movie. Like there was a Panasonic TV, I believe, that had Avatar as an exclusive, and then I believe there was a Samsung TV that had How to Train Your Dragon as an exclusive. And personally, I think the LGs were the best because they used the passive glasses that you'd get in the movie theaters, not the shutter glasses. I don't believe those came with anything. This came with a Sony TV, and by far, this is the strangest release, not only to put it on 3D, but also to use as a selling point. As you can see up front, it advertises over 10 minutes in 3D, and that is not a lie. This is not a fully made 3D movie. No part of this movie was shown in 3D when it was in theaters, at least not in America. So for Sony to take that and to make some of the sequences into 3D for this disc was already really strange. And then to think that your biggest selling point was you were going to give an exclusive movie that had only about 12 minutes of 3D to go along with their 3D TV, that's just a bizarre concept. And I think the 10 minutes is actually kind of generous. It's really more like 20 when you get down to it. But the whole movie's not in 3D. And the way this works is, you watch the movie and you're watching it in 2D. And then at some point, there will be like a little green pair of glasses that flash in the corner, signifying that you put the glasses on. Now, at that point, you watch the movie for a little bit and you watch it in 3D and yada yada. Then no glasses that are red show up, and that's when you take the glasses off, and it's very, very annoying, and it makes it more of a hassle to watch than anything. So for that reason, this is by far the strangest thing, because it's not fully in 3D. And yet they made parts of the movie in 3D specifically to bundle with the TV that was selling you the gimmick of 3D, and they decided to bundle a movie that didn't have very much 3D, and it wasn't even very good 3D. I mean, it was fine, don't get me wrong, but it's not like it was life-changing or anything if I was to watch this again, and that seems unlikely, but if I were to, I'd probably want to watch it in 2D. By the way, for those of you who are wondering, just like most early 3D releases, this one has the 2D version on it. When you go to play the movie, it says, do you want to watch it with the 3D enhancement, or do you want to watch it in 2D? Now, normally, I'd say that's a good thing, so that means even if you're not a 3D fan, you can pick it up, but here's the thing. Apparently, this was such an underwhelming experience that even though Avatar and How to Train Your Dragon and all these other exclusives eventually came to store shelves as their own standalone Blu-rays, Michael Jackson's This Is It did not. They never pressed 3D discs for the general market. It was only with the TV promotion. And for a long time, these were apparently really expensive. And I still see discs on eBay that are fairly expensive. I got mine for $15 brand new. I don't know if I got lucky. But unless you seriously just want to have a 3D collection, this is going to be fine for most people. Now that said, there was another reason I wanted to get this. It wasn't just to beef up my 3D collection. It's because I did see this first at a Big Lots, and it was $3. And I did not like this movie when it came out. In fact, I'm going to post the written review that I had below in the link section. And back then, I actually used to have like this film critic show with a friend of mine, Marco, called Space Terrific Reviews. And we did not like this. In fact, I remember it like it was yesterday. I have to say right now, this movie up front does not work the way it should. It's been a long time since I've seen a movie as poorly edited as this one. Video quality jumps a lot, where sometimes it's really clean and then another scene it's blurry and you can barely see it.
Baffling film. I mean, it was really frustrating, just bizarre. It was. I didn't find them editing between the songs difficult, or I found it understandable. I found that most of what they included to be frustrating. I mean, he danced. He was in shape. He was creepy. He just looked like a skeletal, freaky woman.
He wasn't doing any of his signature moves, though. I don't know if that's because of his age or because it was, like he said, rehearsal, and he didn't give a darn.
There was nothing to the film. It was literally, they edited 10 minutes together, and then they faded out, and then they edited 7 minutes together, and they faded out, and it was no arc, it went nowhere. It was just, here's a bit of Michael Jackson, here's a bit of Michael Jackson, and it wasn't interesting.
And for some reason, they kept interrupting the songs, which seemed... Yeah, that was a... So this movie just never impressed me much. It just didn't. But I saw it there, I saw $3. And there were a couple thoughts that came to my mind when I first saw it. The first was that, oh jeez, I remember when I paid $20 or like $17 to see it in IMAX. Now it's $3. But also I was wondering if my perception of the movie would have changed in the 9 years since its release. We are now almost 10 years to when Michael Jackson died. And I remember at the time it felt like such a shameless cash-in, and it wasn't very interesting. It was basically an unfinished concert, and I just hated it. And I saw that, and then it was like, you know what? I wonder if I would have a different opinion of it now, because I think movies should be reevaluated sometimes. And there's most of the time I would not reevaluate a movie that I gave like 1 star. In fact, I might have even given it 0 stars at the time. And yet, again, this is kind of unique. Like, I remember just feeling really bitter about the movie at the time and the circumstances about its release. So I just figured, what on earth would it look like now? So I picked it up. And then I found out about the 3D version, and I picked that up. Now, I rewatched the movie to kind of get a grasp of what the 3D was like, but also to reevaluate the movie. And the movie is, interestingly, not as offensive as I felt about it when I first saw it. The movie is actually way more fascinating now. I'm still not sure if I'd go as far as to call it good, because it is an unfinished concert. And there's not a whole lot of depth. And in fact, one of the... underneath all of it says, discover the man you never knew, and I don't feel like I understand him anymore. Like, there's almost nothing about him himself personally that makes it into the movie. Although there is one scene in there that has always stood out to me, and I remember saying that as a particularly poor scene to include in the movie. And now in hindsight, it's actually kind of a brilliant scene to leave into the movie where Michael Jackson, and my timer lamp just went off, is trying to tell the sound operator that the sound in the headphone earpiece is too loud. And it's a really bizarre scene where he's going like, I feel like I'm being punched by love, Love, like, and, you know, at one point the sound guy basically says, oh, do you want us to turn the sound down, Mr. Jackson? Like, yes, I just need to feel less, you know, like a punch. And it was a bizarre scene. He did not come out looking good in it. I wondered, why on earth would you leave this in? And the funny thing is, ironically, that is probably the most personal scene in the movie. It gave us an idea of what Michael Jackson was like. He was really strange, and he didn't communicate with people very well, and he kind of had almost his own language and his own way of thinking. And so, in hindsight, that was probably a brilliant scene because it was one of the only times in the movie where you kind of got a glimpse at him as a person, whereas for most of the movie, he's just rehearsing. Another thing that I'm not as angry about is the fact that it was released. When it was released at the time, I was very upset, like, because it was like, oh, you booked these concerts, you built these stages, you made these costumes, and like 10 days before your first show, Michael Jackson dies. So you lost a lot of money, and you want to reclaim that as soon as possible. Now, it is very possible that is what they were aiming for when they sold the rights to the movie. And I think that whoever bought it had waited a few years, maybe this would not have come off feeling this way. But now it's kind of interesting because I know the concert didn't happen, and I knew it was going to be his last one in London. And at the time, again, I felt like you were capitalizing on his death. But now, looking back and having some distance between the event, you know, the death and, you know, watching this movie again, I'm actually more intrigued by it because, yeah, I get to kind of see as close to what they can show me what this show would have looked like. It's not the show. It's not a perfect representation. There's probably no way to actually do that unless someone would, because it doesn't appear like Michael Jackson really rehearsed in full-blown with, you know, lights off and everything. There was always something they were tweaking with, and they weren't filming the rehearsals as diligently as they, in hindsight, probably should have been, because they weren't expecting him to die. So now that some time has passed, I'm looking at it and I'm actually more fascinated that we can kind of see what the show might have looked like. It's also a little eerie to be watching the movie because, you know, Jackson seems to be in good health. You don't get any signs that he's doing drugs, and yet you watch it knowing this is the man's final hours and he will be dead soon. And this is literally what he's doing. He's preparing for work, and there's just something really, really morbid about that now. And, you know, actually, now that I think about it, I still have issues to some extent with the movie for that very reason, because it is kind of weird that, you know, they were filming this guy. He's pretty much on his deathbed. He's suffering tremendously, and we're watching his last moments, and we know we're watching his last moments, and that is a little disturbing. Now, with all that said, now that I have some more admiration for the fact that I get to see essentially was an unfinished product, but I get an idea what it would have been like, and seeing at least a couple personal moments that I would not have otherwise seen, has my opinion of this changed? And the answer is, it has, in a way. I still don't know if I like it, though. It doesn't really work well as a documentary. It's not fully a concert. I've even kind of, like I said in my other video, the movie is essentially a special feature, a glorified special feature that got released theatrically. It was a special feature for a DVD of a concert that never got made. And that way, it's kind of like that documentary where Terry Gilliam was, you know, making that movie about Don Quixote. And they were doing all that filming for special features for the DVD. but the DVD will never come out because the movie got canceled. So instead, they cobbled it together as a documentary instead. So that's kind of what it's like. I think that's a better movie, by the way. And, you know, I don't know if this works well on its own, but I find it to be a little bit more intriguing, and I'm glad it exists for Michael Jackson fans because, again, we're coming up to 10 years where he died, and there's a whole new slew of fans who are discovering his music, and they don't get to see the concerts, they don't get to see the music videos playing on TV every day. So to have this is probably a good thing in the long run. And it makes for a really bizarre 3D Blu-ray. It really does. It's not one that I would necessarily recommend unless you want to absolutely have the whole set. Like in terms of having a whole 3D Blu-ray collection, which is why I'm now picking up movies like Pixels when it's like $5 at Big Lots, because why not, I guess. But, you know, but it's also one of the more intriguing Blu-ray 3D, so if it's not too expensive, I don't recommend you pay more than $30 for this. I really don't. But if you can get it for $30 or less and you really want to build that collection, then you know what? It's an interesting one. It's an odd duck, but it's interesting. So anyway, now I pass the question on to you. Do you guys have this movie? Do you like it? Which version do you own? And do you have any interest in getting it now? And did any of you who not watch the movie when it first came out, would you, if you watch it now, what are your thoughts about it now? I would love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. If you enjoy the videos I make, consider becoming a patron. It's $1 a month. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.